Hey everybody, I'm Sam from Single. Today I'm here with Jason Lekberg, who owns Lekberg Enterprises. Lekberg Enterprises is a label services company. They help artists globally market themselves without giving up their rights and their royalties. It's super on brand with what we're doing and building here at Single, so I'm excited to have this conversation. Jason, do you want to just give a couple lines of an introduction before we kind of kick this off?
Sure. Yeah. So that was exactly what I do. My company helps artists release and market their material without signing away their rights or royalties. So all of the infrastructure, the back end that a record label would provide, with a heavy focus on direct to consumer uh, as well. I've been doing that for a little over a decade now. Worked with a lot of different bands. But yeah, Single is one of my favorite technologies. I've been using them from the beginning, and just they're a big part of how we are able to communicate with our fans, to monetize our fans, and to retain our fans.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think you noted something a bit about just like using Single for all these years, and Single is interestingly positioned on top of Shopify. And I think that like a lot of people in music don't really think beyond maybe merchandise when they think of Shopify. How did you like start interacting with Single? Like, why did you download and how did you get started? And then maybe how has that changed over the years? I know we've added a lot of different functionalities and tools.
Sure. So, like I said, all the artists I work with own all of their intellectual property. And since they own their intellectual property, we own all of the methods of communication and methods of sale, right? So we are distributing to traditional retail, but we're also selling direct to the consumer. That's our biggest thing. So all of my artists' websites are actually Shopify stores.
Cool.
And we just basically skin and push those stores to make them look more like a traditional artist website. But Shopify is our back end. They're our CRM. They're everything that we do. So for us, Single providing SoundScan reporting, digital downloading of sales and stuff like that early on was exactly the solution that we needed to be able to do those things within that construct. And then as you've added the additional tools, it's kind of been like, oh, that's a cool other option, and that's a cool other option. You know, we hacked some things a little bit early
Yeah.
during the pandemic. We did some live streams where we had Single just provide kind of like the container for the live stream video, and we handled all the ticketing and the windowing and the different rights access within our site. But obviously, as you've built your tools better and better and better, now it's one-stop shop.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think recently, maybe just like a month or two ago, we teamed up on a stream that was a re-airing of a recorded show. I think there's two things in that. Like, would love to unpack how you landed on Shopify for that stream. Like, I think you talked a lot about the advantages that maybe Shopify offered, but building Single into it, like, why did that make sense as you were working with a band?
I mean, in general, the kind of larger ethos of all of my artists and my clients and my company is that we want to own the consumer, right? Like, that relationship is the most important
Yeah.
relationship, because if you can get a person to come in and then you can continue to market to them, whether that is actually selling them a product or just simply like, hey, we have a tour coming, or here's a new music video, or just go to Spotify, like whatever it is, right? Like owning that relationship is key for us. And so I have never worked with, I mean, way back in the day I did, but I have not in the recent past worked with any of the other third party sites for streaming video or even VIP or any of that kind of stuff. Shopify is a store. We own the customer in
Totally.
there. We can sell things. We can window access. We own all the information about the consumer. So to me, it's not even a consideration to go outside of Shopify to build things and to do stuff like that. And as I mentioned a second ago, like even if there's not an app that does what we need to, I have a guy on retainer that will hack something. We'll be like,
Totally.
hey, if we take this app, and then we do these things, and like we're gonna keep the customer. That's so
For sure.
valuable to me, because if I give a third party streaming company not only 30% of my revenue, but all of my customers, to me, that's just a lose lose, and I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And what has that unlocked for you guys in terms of doing different live streams on top of Shopify? Like, does that normally translate into like connecting with fans for like future offers or just like maintaining communication? How do fans typically like benefit? Fans and artists benefit from that.
It's interesting because obviously, what we all just went through,
Yeah.
there was a good period there where live streaming was, that was it. That was all we had, which was fascinating for me because I've been in the business quite a while, years. And back when I started, we were doing live streams as like, hey, this is a new cool thing. Everybody can do them. And nobody wanted to do it, right? 2006, 2007, that time frame when we started doing the very first live streams. People were just like, this is horrible. It's a bad experience. So we did some interesting things that didn't really work.
Yeah.
Then during the pandemic, all of a sudden it was like, this is it. And so we got really into it. And I think fans responded well to it early. And then I think kind of got burnt.
Yeah.
And now it's become, it's not a profit center at all. So specifically the stream you and I were talking about, right? We did, Gwar did a live stream during the pandemic of the 30th anniversary of their biggest album. Big production we did for that one. And we came up on the third anniversary of that live stream. And we have a lot of product of the DVD that we made of it and shirts and stuff like that still sitting around. And we were like, hey, you know what? Like, this had a very specific window of time. Let's find a way to reinvigorate that. So, we sold the live stream. I think the ticket was $1, right? Because for us, it wasn't about like, let's not make money off the stream. Let's not lose money, right? But re-energize the fan base, get people excited and aware again about the product. And then it's just a cool opportunity for the fans to come in and jump in the chat room. Because it was a re-airing, we didn't say it was live, but the re-air was live. Yeah. And we did it in 3 different time zones. So the band were in the chat room chatting with fans. And, from an engagement standpoint, aside from like having somebody come sit in your living room, you can't get a lot better than that.
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you bring up like a good point about like there's like time sensitive moments to like re-engage fans with content. And then I think also when you think about content today, like it's so easy to maybe think about like just like premiering something on YouTube, but like the value of doing that in your own storefront is important. That being said, balancing those two worlds is also important. How do you go about that for maybe other people? Like you've been building in this space for 10 years and it makes sense why Single's been a partner because we think about these things in the same way. But like if someone's just starting out on that path, like how would you maybe suggest that they balance that? Like anytime they're maybe putting out new merch or new music or even doing like fan club stuff, like how do you balance that?
Yeah, it is a really tough one, right? Because the reality is it doesn't matter how big your band is, your core supporters, the people who are going to be on your mailing list, the people who are going to come back and repeat buy are always going to be a small percentage of your fan base. So it's tough to look at that and go, okay, let's say you're 80-20, right? That's the marketing people love to talk about that. 20% of your fans drive 80% of your revenue, right? Well, that means 80% of your fans are just listening on Spotify or Pandora or Apple Music or YouTube or wherever, right? And you can't ignore them. It's too many people. So you really have to think about the different types of content. And specifically with my artists, we actually, again, kind of going back to hacking stuff, we found a reward software that's like meant for, like if you go to like it's like a cosmetics place. And if you buy 5 things, you get a 6th one free or whatever. And we were able to kind of adjust their technology and then put behind a secured wall in the site, an old school forum, literally.
Yeah.
And we allow fans to earn coin and points to be able to get inside that forum. And then we put specific content inside that forum, right? Okay. And we give early access and things like that. So very often there is specific content that goes there, but the cost of content is so high that it's more about early access than it is exclusive access.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And then beyond that, even like content is key, but what's more key is the artist. And so if the artist is interacting in there and that is a place where people feel like, okay, if I'm part of the site, not only am I getting early information, but I actually maybe have some real communication with the artist, as much as you can do that, because obviously that has to be managed at scale. But that I've found is more valuable than saying you can only watch this here, because even for the diehard fan, right? Like even like your most diehard fan, if your website isn't compatible with whatever smart TV they have or whatever else, and they're like, well, I just want to watch this right now. That's not a good experience for them. So it's, to me, again, it's more about early than it is exclusive.
Yeah, and I also think that's a good point. Anytime we start talking about artists, I think it's about in some way doing more with what you're already doing, because artists today, they are on that like hamster wheel of like, you got to be on YouTube, you got to be on TikTok, you got to be on Instagram, you got to be doing all these things, and like their piece of the pie just keeps getting smaller. So it's maybe more about like, what are you already doing, what do your fans already love, and how do we help like create that for like every level of fandom. So like if it is content, if it is merch, it's like, here's how you can get a little bit more, like just as a super fan in my store. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I
And
mean,
listening to them.
Yeah, totally. What are some like maybe unexpected things that have come out of this as well? Is there like no pressure on my end and even asking that, but I'm just curious, like, has there been anything that you unlocked that you were like weren't expecting to by maybe doing this stuff with fans?
Yeah, I mean, I would say both on the positive and the negative side,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So on the positive side, there have been a couple of things that, a couple products, especially during the pandemic, that I have a one specific artist who said, we're going to sell a custom song, and that song cost $7,500. And when we put it up, people were like, "You're out of your mind." And you know what? We've sold them. And
Dang.
that was something that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like you step back and go, okay, wow, like I understand there are whales, and then there are
Yeah.
whales in the whales, right? And that was a really fascinating thing. And I think that building the trust of having years of communication direct to the fans through that allowed someone to say, I'm willing to spend this amount of money, and just simply having the channel to be able to
Yeah.
do it, right? Like, where else are you going to do that? I mean, at that number, like if you're at Patreon or something else, you're losing just a massive chunk of that to the system, right? For
Yeah.
nothing. So that's been a really surprising thing. On the negative side, I will say that, people are people, right? And so you're going to have some that are going to abuse the system, and some people that are going to abuse access. So that is something that I wouldn't say is necessarily super surprising, but it is,
Yeah.
it has been
Part of
something
it.
that's been like, oh wow, really? Like we
Yeah.
got to deal with this now,
Yeah.
So there's been a little bit on both sides. Yeah, either way though, I feel like it's necessity. So the good comes with the bad, no matter what you're doing. And I would rather own the fan. Own, obviously, that's kind of a
Yeah.
harsh term, but I would rather have the direct relationship with the fan than not.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. No, I love this. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that who might be listening to this conversation and take just something away. And I think what you've done across the board with different artists is a testament to like this stuff also doesn't happen overnight. Like I think it's probably easy to like maybe do one live stream or start even like some form of a fan club and be like, this isn't working. But just like your artist career, like that's something you build over time and that trust. So I think it's also like experimenting with like what's honest, like what can you upkeep, what do your fans value, or what are they interested, how do they want to show up, and like figuring out that like D2C or that direct to fan relationship over time. It's maybe easy to like maybe bite off more than you can chew and also be too afraid to even take a bite at first, but maybe just showing up in the space and being honest with fans and saying, hey, I'm here, like I'm figuring this out with you, and then you could have these like timed celebrations and they get merch that like maybe they didn't even know existed and they're just hanging out with the band online for like a whole weekend. Like that's fun for fans. They eat that stuff up. So
Yeah, I would say that the simplest and the easiest way to get going is simply calendarization. And I know it is a difficult thing because I say this all the time. Nobody ever picked up a guitar to be responsible, but the more that you are able to schedule your content and what you're doing and stick to that schedule, and put out, like, say, here's our schedule, here's our, just your whatever your content is. If you know that you're going to put out this piece at this point and this piece at this point, and it's going to go to these people at this time, and continue and stick to that schedule, that's going to be how you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Because most often as an artist, you're just being creative and you're running around trying to
yeah.
find money that you don't have to do the things that you'd like to do. And then you're working a day job and you got a family and you got whatever else. And so what falls to the wayside? putting things out on a regular basis and being able to be consistent. So calendarizing things is the easiest way to start, because if you just do that and make sure you stick to it, you're going to see results. If nothing else, from just the fact that repetition helps with the relationship with the fan, but repetition, as we're seeing, is powering algorithms in a lot of other things too, right? Like Spotify, that's the reason people are doing waterfall releases, and the reason they work is because Spotify sees regular releases and Spotify starts going, oh, let's give this people more attention. So that is, I think that's the easiest thing. It's just make a calendar and do it.
Yeah. And I think you said something too about like that, like repeated experience, and it's kind of like fans want something to cling on to. Like if you're always wearing a shirt, they are all of a sudden gonna like be like wearing your shirt. And even putting things out and creating rituals, I think, is such a critical part of this. And not all rituals stick, but it's that discovery of seeing what works. And it's not just like showing up on, YouTube, and it's not just putting out merch on an album. Like you might find that fans like really love the beanie you wear. Like if you're a person who, like there's so many levels of like how fans like to engage. So I think that's a good point. And then having a calendar to just go ahead and do it. But yeah.
I mean, look, it's, the beautiful thing about music is that it's not just, we're not just selling cookies, right? We're not selling toilet paper. We're selling something that has an emotional connection with the fan and with the buyer. So everyone, your core fans are looking for that ritual. Ritual's a great word, right? And your most diehard fans are going to have things that they own of yours in their will. They may be buried with something that's related to you, right? Your most diehard fans are going to go that far. And that's going to happen because of this thing that you've created that makes sense. It's not just, I got out of bed today and I have a guitar and like, pay me, right? Like what thought have you put into not just the art you're creating, but why you're creating it and the story you're telling and how you're telling that story. And the more you do that, that's why people get excited about, Game of Thrones or whatever else, right? Somebody wrote that whole story and then executed that story and then laid it out over time. It's the same thing. Your content delivery, you're building a narrative, you're building a fantasy, and you're delivering that. And that's the job.
Yeah, totally. Well, I love this conversation. There's like so many tidbits that I think, so many people can get out of this wherever you are. Like we work with so many big artists here, and as I know you do, and they're like, how do I do this? And you're like, one, you kind of just have to do the thing, and then you kind of have to keep doing the thing and respond. Yeah. So that's true of like, artists just starting out and artists who have been in the game for a while and maybe like Billboard charting artists. Like, yeah. So thanks for sharing. If there's any like final words you want to share, or if there's like any places that people could come find you and support the work that you're doing and reach out, I'll give you that and we'll hop off.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, LekbergEnterprises.com is my site, even though I don't really promote that much, right? My company is small. I can only handle so many artists, but I always welcome hearing from people. As far as final words, like, just do it. That's all you can do, right? What I've learned of more than anything else in the many years I've been in the business is that tenacity is the most important thing. And you're going to hear no more times than you ever want to.
Yeah.
And things like single can be daunting, right? Especially when you start looking at, okay, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars to even be able to have the product. It's like, yeah, but one of my mentors told me this, and I'll end on this. The number one reason people don't buy is because they don't know it exists. Yeah. So if you're not available for sale and people don't know about it, they can't buy it. So you just got to make that commitment and understand, make a budget. This is how much I'm going to spend this year, and just do it. And you're going to either win or not, but you're going to have known that you gave it the right chance.
For sure. Cool. I love that. Jason, thank you. It was good chatting.
You bet.
And until next time, we might have to continue this one. So yeah.